Thank you for joining us for the concert. Learn more about the powerful connection between music and brain health by checking out the information at www.aarp.org/brainhealth. Hi, everybody. Welcome to the concert. I'm Andy Bozarth, Director of Outreach and Advocacy for AARP Kansas. Have we got a treat for you tonight? So sit back, relax, and enjoy the spoken word poetry of Ed Brunt.
It is. It is ironic that we are more than willing to accept and embrace the concept of an infinite number of snowflake shapes, but stubbornly balk when faced with the reality that not everyone fits into the framework of our prejudices. I met a man. I met a man who could not cry. How very odd. I asked him why. He said, "I find it such a waste to splatter tears upon my face. I once felt sorrow. I played my hand with poverty and the plight of man. When love would leave me open wide and bitter sweetness would flood inside, when pain so great a Spartan's pride would be sore pressed to quite survive, when those I've loved have crossed the line to be no longer in my time. I've fought on beaches, once golden sand, now haunted with ghost blood of man, and that spilled blood for justice fought has now become one's justice bought. And when I smell the stench of air from hopes of man turn man's despair, when demigod technology hangs o'er us a sword of Damocles, when I felt I could walk on air, and when I found that no one cared, I've cried. My God, oh, how I've cried. I thought the flow would not subside. I cried until I thought the world could drown in all the tears that I put down. I've cried. It seems my heart would break. But crying was my big mistake. My tears don't feed the hungry poor or stop the rich from grabbing more. My tears will never stop the man who holds a gun in death-stained hands. And for the dead, my tears I save. For tears do naught but wet the grave. Nor can those tears reshape the past or give us peace that will always last. Cry on, my friend, if that's your game. And when you stop, life's still the same. Pray, give me a reason, I'll shed a tear. But there is none, I fear. How very odd. What could I say? He seemed wrapped up in his dismay. To cheer life's heroes, its villains to hiss, to aim the mark, to hit, to miss. All this is life, all this and more. We're given rich, we're given poor, and joys and sorrows, for this I see is part of human destiny. I could not answer his request. Indeed, it seemed at very best to leave him in his blackened mirth. But through his wall I saw the hurt, and suddenly it was clear to me just what my answer was to be. I cry, my friend, as others do, for part of me is part of you. And as he turned to bid goodbye, I saw a teardrop in his eye. I started writing poetry back when I was in junior high school, long time ago. But I really didn't start releasing poetry until maybe the 80s, 90s, when I got together with some poets and professors at KU. They began to read some of my poetry and they liked what was going on, so they started publishing one of them. Even the gods must fall. Look for the day when the sun goes down to give the sky a crimson hue, and the gods, confused by their own deity, leave the mount of Olympus to dwell among mortal men. When all that is special ceases to be special, the legends have died. There is no reason to be. There was once a spark who, when taken out of context, thought himself a flame and ignited the world. There was once a flame who, reduced by deception, thought himself a mere spark and decided to join oblivion. When the temple shakes, even the gods must fall. Fairy tales. She said to tell her a story. She said this in a smoky voice and deadened eyes the color of streets after a lethargic winter rain half washes away the snow and leaves the world a peppered, lifeless gray. She said to tell her a story. She said this to pass the time and to hear some sound, any sound, in a world that had lost tangibility, where the only proof of her life was pain and the constant checking of nurses who wanted to ensure that her existence didn't end on their shift. I began. Once upon a time, I began that way just to watch her eyes. I began that way to see if her faraway look would begin to reflect a faraway place, a faraway time, a faraway love, the touch of a faraway hand. Once upon a time, I had a dog. He was such a cute little puppy. He followed me everywhere. He slept with me, took baths with me, wrestled with me, even taught me to lick myself. You probably didn't know that then. I was a lot more limber. He was pitch black, blacker than death, blacker than the eyes of Judas. So I named him Spot. Yeah, from Dick, Jane, and Spot. You know how poor we were back then, living in the ghetto. You always told me that colored people were too poor to even afford names of their own, so we stole them from the white folks. One day, while you were at work, I was at home making an apple butter and cracker sandwich. I heard a car outside screech to a halt. I ran out the front door. A car had hit Spot. A lady was sitting in the street with Spot in her lap. She was stroking his head. He was whimpering. She kept saying, "Hush, puppy, hush, puppy." She took him away with her. He never came back. When you came home from work, I told you Spot had run away. We drove around looking for him. I didn't tell you what had happened. I knew you loved him too, and I didn't want you to hurt. But that's why I can't eat those round cornmeal balls. Oh, so now you know. Oh, you smiled. You thought that was funny. Or maybe you're just someplace in your mind where the sun is shining. I hope my voice took you there. I hope I helped to ease your pain like you always ease mine. Here, the nurse brought you a drink. No, you lay there. Let me help you with the straw. She asked me again who I was. I told her I was her best friend. I smiled. She closed her eyes and called me Mary, the medicine in her drink. She fell asleep, the smile still on her lips. Sleep well. I will come back tomorrow. I will be anyone you wish me to be. I will tell you another tale, not altogether a tale. The world was made in 6 days, but not by me. I can't form the universe by command, but I can sit with you and hold your hand, like you sat with me when I was a child, when my lungs would not allow me air. My words can help you form your own universe, a universe by your command or by your memories, and you will be at peace. I love to read, and I've read a number of writers, but the person who has been the most influential to me has been Robert Frost. I am a big fan of Robert Frost's writing. Poetry-wise, I love the writings of Hemingway. I love the writings of Dickens, but when it comes down to poetry, it is definitely Robert Frost, heads and shoulders above everyone else. Bob Billings at Castled. New Age love reminds me of New Age cars. Bucket-seated, plastic-molded, gadget-laden biospheres airbagged for safety. I don't trust your leadership, it says for the passenger. You're on your own, it says for the driver. We may travel in the same direction, on the same path, but we're not really together. And if something happens, well, whoever walks away, walks away. Only the destination matters. Classic love stands like time-tested vintage cars. Sturdy, dependable, bench seats, unbelted, room to move. The safety is in the construction. I trust you with my heart, my love, my life, she speaks silently. I am honored by you and will not be reckless with you, he acknowledges with quiet strength. We travel in the same direction, on the same path. We share the same fate. It is our journey together that matters. I sat at an intersection waiting for the light to change. A couple pulled up next to me in an old Chevy Bel Air. His hair was aged gray. His arm hung out the window. His fingers tapped the door in time to the rhythm. Her face wore the classic beauty of time. Her skirt draped his leg. Her hand rested on his knee. They sat close, secret sharing close. Survived past hardship and made it close. Till death to us part. Close. Classic car, classic love. I like to write about the interplay between people. One of the poems I wrote was the writer speaks of love or of introspection, sometimes both, but usually one or the other. And I think most poetry, including mine, either revolves around love between people, the disconnect between people, or the observation of life as it pertains to me. Lessons between Burdett and Yeats. Part 1. Nothing more than a startled cry of surprise, then a thud. You awaken on the bedroom floor and actually realize that you just fell out of your top bunk bed. Really, you understood that in mid-descent, but it took the jolt of the floor to confirm your suspicion. You realize that you did not die as you always thought you would, and except for some embarrassment and a small amount of incontinence, you escaped unscathed. You clamber back into bed and lie down, making certain this time that you cling as closely as possible to the cool, pink stucco wall against your bed. Your younger brothers, Brian and Scott, snore in the beds below you, unaware of your flight. The next morning, Terry, the cousin who lives in the house next door, says nonchalantly when he meets you outside, "I was in the backyard last night around 10 o'clock when I heard this god-awful scream. Then a big thunk." He laughed and winked. "Good thing you landed on your head." Terry's always soft-spoken. He has the voice of a healer. How quickly word gets around. It takes years to live down a faux pas like that. Years later, you overhear your mama talking to her best friend, Miss Charlotte, at the kitchen table. "He was always stingy even when he was 4 years old. Once we didn't have any money for bread for dinner, and he had been saving up for this beach ball that he wanted to buy. Well, I asked him for a quarter to buy a loaf of bread, and you know what he told me? 'This is my money. You can't have any. You spent all yours.' He made me so angry. I told him that if he wouldn't contribute to the family, I would start charging him for his meals. He said, 'I don't care.' Imagine 4 years old and that stubborn. He decided he wasn't going to pay to eat and just refused to eat." They laughed. Miss Charlotte asked next, "Well, what happened?" "Well, he went a few hours until he got hungry. Then he came to me crying about being hungry. We had a talk. He understood that we are all part of a family. I fed him. You know I wouldn't let my baby go hungry. But he thought I would. And that was good enough." Part 2. A cigar tree stands as tall as a redwood in the backyard of 2112 North 27th Avenue. On a clear day, you can climb that tree almost to heaven and look out across the neighborhood. You can be very quiet in that tree. You can see everything that is happening into the neighborhood. You can even see into the future. You can see Terry's brother Kim easily outrunning every kid on the block, and he plays football with Leon and Rabbit and Scooter and Old Black Lee and some of the other kids from over the neighborhood. Now, you rarely play football or any sport. Asthma keeps you bedridden, and books and your imagination are your constant companion. You see your brother Scott riding a makeshift skateboard down Yates Avenue. You see the Jackson girls, Gwendolyn, Hortense, Vera, hanging fresh laundry in their backyard. You see your best friend, Walter Robinson's house. He's over there. Walter had the neatest comic book collection. You thought about sending off for the Mr. Atlas bodybuilding course advertised on the back page of the comics, but you always thought that you might need the money for something else, like maybe a loaf of bread. You see Grandma and Pawpaw Owens. Their house was to the southwest. She had fish fries on Friday nights, and when you and Brian would stay overnight, early in the morning on Saturday, Pawpaw would fry chicken for you. You would always awake before 6 o'clock, lying on the sofa bed where you and Brian slept, watching the test patterns on TV, and eagerly awaiting the Saturday morning cartoons, any cartoon to start. At 6 o'clock in the morning, you were snuggled under the blankets, watching the American flag fly on television, listening to the national anthem, and smelling fried chicken. You see grandmother and grandfather Peterson in their house to the east. Grandfather Peterson always smoked cigars. You rarely saw him. He didn't really care for kids. But his presence was always marked by the smell of cigar smoke in the house. When he passed away, your cousin Terry moved into the house to stay with grandmother. He slept on a sofa bed in the living room. Now, when you and Brian stayed there on the weekends, he would leave, and that was good. One day, you found the greatest treasure under his mattress that any young boy could ever find, a Playboy magazine. After that, the puzzles and board games that grandmother kept for you and Brian to amuse yourselves held no sway over the pictures of scantily clad and naked women you visually consumed until the wee hours of the morning, after Brian was asleep, of course. You devoured the images and even read the articles. You started sleeping late after that, even past premium cartoon time. You see life as simple as picking mulberries from the mulberry tree in the alley and washing them and then sprinkling them with sugar from whoever could steal sugar from his mother. You see never leaving the avenue, and you see everyone living there forever. Actually, you can't see any of these things. You can barely see over the rooftops. You definitely can't see into the future, but you know what direction it lays, and that's all that matters. Part 3. Everything I needed to know I learned about on the avenue. If you fall, you will not die. Sometimes you need to stay close to the wall. We are all part of the family. Sometimes you have to sacrifice a beach ball. Learn to forgive. Learn to ask for forgiveness. And don't stray far from your heart. When the world is rough, climb the tree in the backyard of your mind. Let the world become vast and full of mystery once again. Remember beauty. Remember innocence. Feel the sunshine. Smell the breeze. Be quiet. Be still. Look to the heavens for guidance and believe in yourself. You will never know all the rules of the game, but you can still play, and that is good enough. I've done public speaking before with my poetry. I've given performances at art shows. I have done poetry slams. And my dream, of course, would be to have my poetry published so that people could read it. It's not something that has to be done, but it would be nice to have that done. Sister Mary Margaret Sanchez. Sister Mary Margaret Sanchez has quite a mouth on her for a nun. So I've been told. Sister Mary Margaret Sanchez has never spoken directly to me. I understand she pops up occasionally to observe me, to observe what's going on, and if she approves, she nods. Once. 2 nods if she's really impressed. She hasn't said anything to me because I haven't pissed her off. But I've been warned that that could change instantly. I've always been led to believe that nuns were patient, loving, kind, carried rulers, secretly smoked cigarettes in their rooms, held hen parties, gossiped about the Monsignors, constantly mumbled prayers of forgiveness for sins past or sins planned. I asked around about Sister Mary Margaret Sanchez. People who know her tell me she's an independent soul. Spanish parents, the rumor is. Grew up in England, kind of shy, keeps mostly to herself. Sister Mary Margaret Sanchez goes to horror movies and enjoys them. Gives them her patent nod of approval. 2 nods if she's really impressed. Last week, she served in the soup kitchen. Liked it. Intends to go back again this week. Think maybe that's her calling. Sister Mary Margaret Sanchez used to be a street nun, lying on the sidewalk, a plastic finger puppet, until my daughter found her, put her on her index finger, gave her a name, gave her a history, gave her a home. Sister Mary Margaret Sanchez took on a life of her own, and a voice if she has an opinion to express, or if you happen to piss her off. Otherwise, she quietly watches the world and observes, seeing sunshine for the first time, reveling in the freedom of her newly found existence. I'd like to thank AARP for having me on the Friday night concert series. And I'd also like to extend a special thanks to Marvin and Ann Hunt, because they have read me, they believed in me, and it's they who got me focused in this direction. So thank you guys.
Hey, everybody. Thanks for joining us tonight. Tune in next time, same place.